What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, ready to talk some football with Theo Ash, the co-host of the Stay Hot podcast, as well as an NFL thought leader on TikTok. I know that sounds impossible, but I will say, if there is one person on TikTok making sense when talking NFL, it is this gentleman here. It's Theo Ash. Theo, how the hell are you, man?
I'm doing great. I stayed up all night. I was watching cornerbacks. I was watching Woolen and Sauce Gardner because of all the Twitter dialogue that happened a couple days ago when all the
Right.
defensive backs were in his spaces talking about it. So I figured I'd make a video on Gardner versus Woolen, and I am running off zero sleep because it ran
Great.
right into the Tour de France starting at like 3 a.m. my time.
Right.
So I just stayed up and watched that. So if I say anything delusional, that's why. And
Well, no, it's good because this way I get like the unvarnished truth, right? You're just too
yes.
tired to give me BS, so it's good. It's good. For anyone who doesn't know, Theo does do amazing work on TikTok. I highly recommend following him on that platform because, like I said, there's not a lot of great quality NFL content on TikTok. And I think the first time I ever reached out to you, I said, like, man, I really appreciate what you're doing there because holy cow, that is a wasteland when you're talking about like true NFL analysis. And I'm impressed with the level of discourse you've been able to provide on such a suspect platform.
I was hoping it would get better. I joined it and started doing this in 2020. And
Right.
at the time, like there wasn't really anybody serious on that platform. So it was kind of easy for me to grow a platform and be considered one of the more serious ones just because I'd like picked up the Football Outsiders Almanac like once in my life and was like articulating things.
That's great.
And I was
Right.
kind of like in a mad dash before like other serious people joined the platform to like cement myself before like Betts would join it and dunk on me or some equivalent to that.
Right.
Because there was no one like that on
Yep.
TikTok. So
Nope.
I was like, this is awesome. I can say things that are wrong and no one's
No one's
no
there
one
to
will
call you
even
out.
know. And it's been years now and
You're still there.
serious is
No one
no
else
one
is there.
serious is on there. It's just
It's good.
I don't want to say it's just me. There's a couple, but I don't know, man.
Well,
It is kind of bleak.
It's interesting because our own Tyler Herrick has started kind of venturing down that path, right? Because I did say to him, like, look, it's good that well, we're on every platform at Cheesehead TV. It's part of the gig, right? But man, I can't handle TikTok. I can't do it. So to have someone younger kind of start maybe making inroads there, like I said, you are a beacon on that platform. And I will say, like to anybody who doesn't know, Theo is a Packers fan. Grew up a
I
Packers
am.
fan. So I'm going to start with this, buddy. The other day, the Madden ratings came out, or they have kind of continuously been coming out, right? And somebody on Twitter listed the wide receiver speed rankings, and you retweeted it with, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but something akin to, they have to point out the speed stuff because otherwise we might have to start thinking about how we're cooked. So I have to ask you, Theo, are the Packers cooked? Is that your angle here heading into 2023?
Here's the thing about my thoughts on the Packers receiving core is like I get excited about it because it's so young and it's so full of
Right.
potential, and then you see it laid out and you're like, there was a tweet going around a couple weeks ago. And it was like, how loyal are you? And
I
there
remember.
was like quote tweets of like horrible lineups.
Yes, sir.
And I saw the Packers lineup where it was like Love and Watson and Dobbs and Musgrave and Jaden Reed. And I was like, I'm excited about this, but this could very, very, very easily be a how loyal are you graphic in a couple years. Just because, and I don't want to be too
That's
negative.
cold, man.
I like
you're
Love
right.
a lot.
You're absolutely right. Hey,
I
you
like
are
Love a
1,000%
lot. Like I
correct.
really am optimistic about him and the growth of Watson and Dobbs. Like was a monster as soon as he stepped onto the training camp field last year, and it's pretty solid his rookie year and all that. And I like Musgrave looks really athletic in training camp, and you can just tell that he's an NFL athlete. And like I like what they're building, but they're also all like under the age of 24, and there's probably a reason why like no other team in the history of the league has like ever attempted that,
even tried this, right?
yes.
Yeah,
So
I feel you.
I'm optimistic, but at the same time, it's like I do kind of like to poke fun at the situation. I know that there are some, fans, not just Packer fans, but every fan base has fans that cannot handle that, but I'm not one of those people.
I'm
So,
with you. I'm
yes,
with you.
it'll be a
Right.
fast group. Will it be a good group? I hope so. It will be fast though. And I'm
Whatever
glad
they
to
do,
Matt and
hey, they're
people
going to make
pointed that out.
mistakes at lightning speed, so that's
They
good,
are.
and hopefully
They are.
they'll learn from them. That's the whole hope here. What do you think as far as talking about the obviously the pass catchers, but you got to throw in the offensive backfield as well. When you look at Jordan Love, what he's going to have to work with, like you said, it's not like this has been done a whole lot in the history of the league, but he has sat for 3 years. He's not a rookie.
Hmm.
He is a guy who at least has been in an NFL program for several years prior to being given the reins. What do you expect production wise? Like, we all sit here hoping for the best, and we all obviously want him to improve throughout the season. I think that's a given, right? But what do you think realistic expectations are for his production?
I think the numbers I've thrown out in the past are like 3,800 yards, like 23 touchdowns, 11 picks. I think like if it's more than that, I'd be happy. If it's less than that, I'd be concerned. I think those are kind of my over unders. 4,000 yards would be nice and 30 touchdowns would be nice. And these are all the numbers that we've come to expect
Man, I will
as
go on a
Packers
bender
fans.
if he
But
throws 30 touchdowns this year. I'll tell you that.
yeah, right. Yeah, that would be crazy. But it's like, you gotta, the Bears have never had a quarterback that has thrown 4,000 yards ever. And that's, a kind of a shot at the Bears, but it's also, it's hard to do. It's hard to
It's
do. It's
almost like
no
they're
guarantee.
trying. It's like
It's
they're actively trying to be bad at quarterback.
So I think I want to be somewhat reserved. I think that's a perfectly acceptable season for a first year, and then like the next year maybe you can start projecting the 30 touchdown numbers. But
Right.
yeah, something hovering around that ballpark. And I think the offense probably takes a small step back from where it was last year, but where it was last year is not quite as bad as I think we think it was.
I hear what you're
It
saying.
was
Right.
it was around borderline top 10 in a lot of metrics, yards per drive, points per drive, offensive DVOA. I don't think it
They
was
just
below
died in the red
13th.
zone. They died in the red
Yeah.
zone. That was, I mean, if they score touchdowns rather than kick field goals or turn it over, they're probably like one of the top offenses in the league. Like, just
So
point blank.
yeah. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be a bit lower than that just because, say what you want about how Rodgers played last year. It was not a banner year for him by any stretch of the imagination. But there's something just about him, checking out of running plays consistently. Like those are the things veteran quarterbacks give you and the accountability. Like he knows every single mental mistake that the wide receivers are making.
Right.
And he knows exactly like how the offense is supposed to run and how to be an NFL quarterback. And all these little details that is apparent when you're watching Aaron Rodgers offense versus insert really any young quarterback offense.
Sure.
So just with stuff like that, like I do think that they're gonna regress a little bit in the first year with Love and everything. But like I said, they were a kind of a borderline top 10 unit last year. So if they regress a little bit, I'm hoping for something maybe in like the 15 to 20 range. Um, because I really do think Love has a chance to be good right away. I think the Chiefs game was more impressive than people think,
Totally
and the
agree.
Eagles game was
Not as
really
impressive as,
special.
as maybe people think it is. I think it's special in the sense that he really showed command of the offense, and that's
Hmm.
where you get excited as a fan, right? Like the idea that it was definitely going in that environment, down 2 scores, and basically keeping them in the game. Had a chance to really kind of pull ahead at one point. Like that's impressive stuff. For me, that's what gets me excited as a fan.
Yeah, and I think the anticipation that he throws with and the building off of what he showed in the Chiefs game, because in
Right.
the Chiefs game, he wasn't holding the ball. He wasn't Zach Wilsoning it. He wasn't
Right.
running around the backfield and like, I have no idea what to do. There's pressure. What he was doing was hitting the top of his drop. He was under immense pressure because probably he wasn't setting the protections correctly because he had like 3 days of notice. and it was Arrowhead and it's loud and it's
Right.
Brent Venables blitzing more than he's ever blitzed. Like it's a tough environment. And they were leaving Devontae Adams single covered, and he was hitting the top of his drop, and he was gunning it to Devontae Adams. Not a bad idea. I understand what he's doing. There are some young quarterbacks who get thrown into situations, and I'm like, I don't know what they're thinking. And with Love, it was like, okay, I see the vision. He's trying to bomb it to Devontae one-on-one, and it's hard. It's hard when you're under pressure. There weren't a lot of underneath routes. Like it was always Devontae on a go for some reason.
Right.
It was never like Devontae
Or a
on a
deep
drag.
out. Right.
Right,
Exactly.
right. So it
Right.
was very, very high difficulty throws. And he was at least, I think, like trying to get the ball to the right place, which is, the best receiver in the world, the one-on-one. So like I understood that. And then he
Right.
came in at the end in the Lions game. And that was kind of an up and down performance, but there were some real moments of hitting the top of his drop, getting the ball out like that before the wide receiver breaks in a closing window. Like there were real big time anticipatory throws like that.
Yes.
And then you get to, so it's like, okay, that first
You see
year
the
he wasn't quite
progression.
ready. He was thrown in and he wasn't holding the ball a long time. He was getting the ball out in like Tua type of range instead of like Justin Fields type of range. He wasn't like he can create out of structure, but that's not what he was relying on. He was operating the
That's a
offense the
really
way
good
it was meant.
observation. Yes.
Mhm.
1,000%. Yes.
And so that's the set the stage. It's like he wants to be good in structure. He is getting rid of the ball quickly. It's just not all like the situation is weird. He's inexperienced. He's kind of getting thrown in. Then in the Eagles game, he's doing the same things. He's hitting the top of his drop, instantly getting the ball out. But there was none of the bad stuff. It was just all the it was a couple anticipatory throws. It was quick decisions. It was confident decisions. So I think even though we've only seen him kind of in these bubbling spurts, like in the preseason and in these short little stints, these just drives, even you can kind of detect growth and you can kind of detect the type of player that he is. And I like the type of player that he is. So I'm hoping that those glimpses are legit.
Right.
I think they can be legit. I don't think it's something you can fake. And I think that I think that he's going to surprise a lot of people. I really am optimistic about that, even though I joke about it. The core ending up on a How Loyal Are You banner. It's just so young. It's just so young, and we're basing off sample sizes that are so small. But there really are some promising sample sizes.
Well, what's interesting too, you talk about a young quarterback, and he is developing. One way they can hopefully take a little pressure off the young man is by running the football. And I know right now the value of running backs is the hot topic around the NFL. I'd love to get your take on what's interesting to me, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording here. It's always one thing to have the conversation theoretically on the outside, as we tend to do on Twitter and on the internet, what have you. It really ramps up though when the gentlemen in question start chiming in, whether it's Aaron Jones, whether it's any of these backs, Saquon Barkley, who are reaching a point in their careers where, okay, I have produced and I want to get paid. And the NFL sees that position as like, yeah, and we're going to find someone else who can produce. We don't have to pay. Where do you fall as far as the idea of quote unquote devaluing running backs in the way they can somewhat be interchangeable?
I think that there is definitely something to the running backs don't matter stuff. I think that I used to be really into it when I was a couple years ago. I made a video on it on YouTube. It has like 250,000 views or something crazy. And I'm like, now I kind of regret it because I don't totally
it's there
agree.
forever.
I guess I could. I don't remember my old login and password. Maybe I could, but it's up. It's there. So like, there are plenty of examples. C.J. Anderson years ago coming in and replacing Todd Gurley in the playoffs. Obviously, Le'Veon holding out didn't work. Melvin Gordon holding out didn't work. But there are running backs on second contracts now that are good. I think that no one's getting fired over giving Aaron Jones the second contract. And I think they did something smart by bringing in A.J. Dillon. Maybe it shouldn't have happened in the second round, but I always think about Aaron Jones versus Christian McCaffrey's careers and how Christian McCaffrey spent years of his career with Reggie Bonifin as his number two, and Reggie Bonifin was getting 16 carries the entire season, Aaron.
Right.
It's
Yep.
so like
And
all this
McCaffrey has
spread.
missed how much time? Right.
Yes, he's
Right.
constantly been hurt, right? He
Right.
has last year was his first healthy season. But like last year, he was giving you really good play on his second contract. And if Christian McCaffrey was up for a deal right now, I guarantee you the 49ers would pay it right now
Sure.
because he's the type of running back that I think works in the modern era. Someone who can receive, someone who can, pass block, someone who is also a good runner. I think like those are the types that you probably still have value more than maybe a Derrick Henry right now, who is
Right.
like under center, the entire offense runs through him. It's like a non-shooting big man in basketball. There's just not much of a market for that type of player, but there's
Right.
still a market for big men. It's just they got to change a little bit. And that's kind of where I'm at. And honestly, I think that Saquon and Josh Jacobs can be the type of running back that is good for the modern era. And honestly, I think that these GMs are making a mistake not paying them because, like, if you're the Raiders, like, why not lean on Josh Jacobs for the next couple? Like, what else do you have going? I
Exactly.
guess you have Devontae there, but like, is the passing attack with Jimmy G
I was
and,
just gonna say, but you've done
you
nothing
know,
at quarterback, so right.
right. It's like you're
Ride your
probably
back.
going to give you some consistency if, like, with Josh Jacobs on the ground. And I think, like, operating in good faith if you're an organization is also important. They declined his 5th-year option. He played in the Hall of Fame game for several drives and was like running
Insane.
angry because they
Insane.
were like, we're going to make you prove it. And he did prove he
He
led the
did.
league in everything.
Exactly.
And then they didn't give him a long-term deal. And it's like, well, now you've pissed off Max Crosby, guaranteed, because he was in the car with Josh Jacobs when they didn't sign him, and
Right.
there's your offensive player of the year and your defensive player of the year are both like, this
Fuck this
GM
place.
is like
Right.
unfair, dude. Like that's
Right.
stupid. Like it's not a
Yeah.
good way to manage people, and that's what
That's
general
interesting you bring
manager
that up. I'm going
is.
to be talking about that on my daily chat today. That is exactly kind of the angle I want to take on this because it's so funny how often we hear it's a relationship business, right? Until it's time to make these decisions on the salary cap and the puzzle pieces fitting together, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we have to be dispassionate. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you don't have to be. You can choose to be, but
Mm-hmm.
there's no requirement. And I understand like the idea of constructing your roster in the ultimate way, the most efficient, effective way, and you want to win football games. That is the underlying thing here. I understand that, and I don't dismiss it. But these aren't numbers; they are
Yeah,
people, and they
and the
they
most
do work together.
And the most efficient way to build the Raiders is not throwing it all over the yard. You have Jimmy Garoppolo.
Exactly.
You don't
Thank
have
you.
Josh Allen. A lot of
Nope.
these analytics is like, oh, pass it a million times. It's like,
Right.
yes,
With
if you
who?
have Joe Burrow,
Thank
if you have
you.
Joe Burrow, if you have Josh Allen,
Yes,
if you have
exactly. Oh, do
Justin
you have a
Herbert,
generational talent at quarterback? By all means, throw it around the
yeah, it
yard.
does.
Yes,
If you're the Chiefs and you have Mahomes, like yeah, Pacheco in the 7th round, like
that'll
absolutely, like
work.
there's no reason to bring in a Derrick Henry
Right.
if you're the Chiefs or if you're the Bengals or if you're the Bills, really.
Yep.
But I mean, this was something I was thinking about the other day. Like if I was the Colts right now and I had Anthony Richardson and I don't want to have a high volume passing attack right away because he's the least experienced franchise quarterback ever. Like right now might be a good time to sign Jonathan Taylor because you can
Right.
lean on that, be a consistent team. You can stay ahead of schedule because he's a really good running back and be a better offense because of him
Totally agree.
while Richardson, is developing. And then once Richardson hits the point where he's Jalen Hurts, hopefully, and he's ready to carry an offense, then, that might be 2-3 years from
That might be
now.
the
And
time to
then,
transition out. Right.
right. So, like, right
Exactly.
now, I think it would be a good time to sign a guy like Jonathan Taylor. And again, like, second contract running backs don't always turn out poorly. Like, Derrick Henry's on his second contract. He's been amazing these past couple years. Nick Chubb has been amazing. Aaron
Right.
Jones has been amazing. Christian McCaffrey was just amazing. These are all guys on second contracts. Jonathan Taylor's 24, Saquon's 25 or 24, and
Mm-hmm.
Josh Jacobs is 25. These guys will probably be good until they're like 27, realistically. You can sign them for 2-3 years and probably like get good play out of these guys. I get that there's been some disaster classes like Todd Gurley with his degenerative knee problem and Le'Veon Bell after sitting out an entire football season.
Right.
Right. But I think like signing these guys now it's just not as bad of an idea as some people make it out to be. And like the track record of success isn't as bad as many make it out to be. And I get it, like they are more replaceable than the average position. But if you're the Giants, did your football team get better today because you freed up enough money to sign absolutely nobody
That's
by
the other
going
thing.
from
Like,
11 million to
why is it?
13
Thank
million?
you, thank you, thank you. This is the thing that always drives me nuts. It's like, well, we've got to save cap space. Okay, fine. But to what end? Like to extend your own, to sign free agents? Like what difference maker is coming in here late in the
For $2
day in the
million,
process
you
for a
could have
couple million
signed
dollars?
Saquon and everyone would have been happy. Like
Exactly.
the organization,
Thank
like
you.
there are players in the Giants locker room right now who are like, that's messed up that they didn't sign Saquon, right?
Right?
Like this GM, he doesn't have everybody's best interest in mind, like and maybe it doesn't matter at all. Like who knows? But
That's
like
it's
I
probably
feel
true.
like that's
That's
what they're
so funny.
thinking. I think
Right.
that's a pretty safe bet. And
Yep.
whether they act on that or not, it's just not what I would want my players to be thinking if I was the GM. And again, you saved a couple $1,000,000, you can sign, I don't
Whoever,
know,
like any,
some
like
rotational
some.
defensive tackle,
Thank you.
like
Like
it's
you're going to
just
bring in
not.
Shelby Harris late in the day, and that's going to be the difference between you making the playoffs or not, or getting
Yeah,
to a Super Bowl or not.
I
No,
do
of
like
course it
Shelby
isn't.
Harris
Of
though.
course it isn't. I love Shelby Harris. I
Right.
want the Packers to sign him, but I
Yes.
also know that's not the difference between contending and missing the
Yeah, and
playoffs.
you can do both. Like there's ways. I know that
Sure,
like the cap is real,
very
but
real. Ask the
that's
Saints. It's very real.
you can do both of those things. You can
Totally
sign
agree.
Shelby Harris and Saquon Barkley. Like
I got
I just don't
exactly.
think they're not asking for $25 million a year, man. Like you could sign Jonathan Taylor for Corey Davis money right now. It's like I would totally do that if I was the Colts. So
Couldn't agree
I
more.
I I think like I get it. I really do get it. I think that they compared to wide receivers and compared to offensive linemen and compared to edge rushers, like yeah, running backs aren't a premium position. But I don't know, when you get when you start putting the pieces in place for like the league to strike, it's like I don't know.
I
I just shell over the extra $2 million and
know.
just
I
get an
feel
all
you.
pro running
I
back
feel
on
you.
my team.
And keep
I
them happy. I'm down with that.
yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
down with that.
I just don't think that that is making or breaking anyone's team. I guess maybe either direction, but it's just a big mess
It
that
is a
could have
big
been
mess.
avoided.
Hey, speaking of
It's
big
not like
messes,
these GMs of the Raiders. Like, what has the GM of the Raiders done? Like, signed Jimmy Garoppolo with with a broken foot and he hasn't passed his physical yet. I mean, he may not even be the
he might
starter
not
on
even be
that
the
team.
starter. That's kind of
Right.
crazy if you think. I mean, once you think about it, it's totally nuts.
Yeah, yeah, it's totally like they could be rolling in with Aiden O'Connell week one. Like this is the GM that's
Let's
making
go.
the Josh
Ult,
Jacobs.
ult,
And what is Joe and the
ultimate
Giants GM?
chaos.
What has he done? Evan Neal was a huge bust. Kayvon Thibodeau's fine, but the rest of that draft didn't necessarily pan out. And then he signed Daniel Jones to a very controversial contract extension. It's like we have
Yeah, the
no
Daniel Jones thing was
proof that like
interesting,
good GMs are making these decisions.
right? Well, and that's the thing. But I don't want to belabor the point because I know everyone's talking about it online. I did want to ask you about it, and I'd love your perspective on it. One last thing before I let you go, I want to flip it over to the defensive side of the ball for the Packers. When you're looking at Joe Barry sticking around as a Packers fan, take off your analyst hat for a second, and as a Packers fan, are you confident that Joe Barry can get it done, or are you really worried about the Packers defense in 2023?
I'm really worried about the Packers defense, mostly because the safeties, like if the safeties make a mistake, a touchdown gets scored on you. And we
Usually.
have the worst safeties, just like we did last year.
So
And
really,
we
they
still
haven't
have Joe
lost anything.
Barry. And like, I don't know, man. It's like his whole thing is like light boxes, prevent the big play,
Right.
let him grind on the with the running game. And I'd rather than beat us like that than beat us through the air. And what ended up happening last year was we were the worst run defense in the league. And we weren't even protecting the big play because the safeties were so bad. And now, I mean, Van Ness is powerful. he can collapse the pocket. You know,
I like
maybe
him.
he follows
He's
the
young,
same development
obviously.
track as Rashawn Gary. I
Right.
think that that's what they're hoping for, and I think that's probably internally the comp that they gave him.
Hmm.
So that would be cool. But I don't know if that necessarily moves the needle for me when the defense was just so underwhelming last year. And the two, I think, biggest problems, which was the defensive play calling. And Joe Barry's never been a good defensive play. Like,
Correct.
it's not like he was awesome before this and like this was just a down year with bad talent. No,
Right.
he sucks. His defenses has always been horrible, right? So, no,
That's
I'm
the
not
track
very
record.
confident in the defense. I'm more confident in
In the
Jordan Love than
totally
the defense.
inexperienced offense with a first-time starter at quarterback, which is
Yes.
saying something.
I always go back and forth on the Packers. Some days I think they're gonna suck, and some days I think they're gonna be okay. And
That means you're a real Packers fan. That's good. That's good.
if I
That's
articulate
honest.
it too much, I
Right.
find myself being like, "But they're gonna be okay," even though
Even though all these things
even
listed
though all
out,
these things
all
may
these
suggest
problems.
that that they won't be. But you know, they do have some superstars. Like Jair's a superstar,
Big
and
time.
Gary was number one in the league in pressure rate on third and longs last year and was a total
Hmm.
beast. And Kenny Clark was really good, and Quay Walker played really well in the second half of last season. And
Agreed.
who knows? Who knows what'll happen? So
Hmm.
I'm hoping, you know, with some better health with Stokes and Gary being healthy for the
Yeah.
whole year would be so big. Um, I think they can have better results than last year, just if Gary is healthy.
Right.
But do I think this will be a top defense? Like, no, I do not.
I think you're not alone in that assessment, sir. Theo, I really cannot thank you enough for taking the time. Make sure you check him out. He's on all the socials. He's got his podcast. He's got his TikTok. He's everywhere you're consuming NFL content. Theo Ash, thank you so much for taking the time, man.
Thank you for having me.